भारतीय छात्र संसद फाउंडेशन, एमआईटी स्कूल ऑफ गवर्नमेंट और एमआईटी विश्व शांति विश्वविद्यालय की संयुक्त पहल भारतीय छात्र संसद 12 संस्करण पूरे कर चुकी है। राजनीति में आने से पहले युवाओं को प्रशिक्षित से प्रेरित करने के उद्देश्य से आयोजित इस लोकतंत्र के त्योहार में पूरे देश से आए 12,000 से अधिक छात्र सहभागी हुए। विविध क्षेत्रों के जाने माने हस्तियों ने इस अवसर पर युवाओं का मार्गदर्शन किया। भारतीय छात्र संसद के इस तीसरे दिन के पहले सेशन में छात्रों से संवाद साधते हुए फॉर्मर मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन एंड ब्रॉडकास्टिंग श्री मनीष तिवारी जी ने कहा,
In 1988, Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman published a book titled Manufacturing Consent that described how the advertisement model destroys media freedom. The media does not have a self-sustaining business model. Most of the revenues are generated through eyeballs that are measured by the flawed indices of the Broadcast Audience Research Council, BARC. Earlier it was TAM, whose numbers were riddled with contradictions and inconsistencies, given that hardly 25,000 to 30,000 people meters were the underlying determinants of thousands of crores of advertising spend attempting to influence 862 million viewers. The total number of BARC people meters today stands at 50,000. In fact, when TAM exited the audience measurement business, its infrastructure was co-opted by BARC. These advertisers consider viewership figures of TV channels and pay accordingly. Thus, a vicious cycle of more eyeballs and more advertisers is created. And here lies the crux of the problem. The more noise you create, the more people will tune in to see you, and the more money you will make. Essentially, when I had put a policy architecture onto these TV ratings in 2014, which actually compelled TAM to exit the country because they were unwilling to disclose their shareholding patterns because there were a lot of incestuous cross-holdings between advertisers and broadcasters, and so therefore it was a you scratch my back, I scratch my back syndrome. But unfortunately, because that policy architecture was not very rigorously implemented by the succeeding government, the situation remains the same. And that's why I have pointed out multiple times in the past that unless media reconfigures their business models to shift from a completely advertisement-driven model and diversify their sources of revenue, there is little hope of seeing any improvement in the sector, and now noise is bound to get shriller. The present model has led to a culture of 24/7 news channels operating on breaking news templates and polarized debates that often distort and sensationalize news, intending to bring about the basest instincts in humankind. The average time spent on digital platforms today is 105 minutes, and on TV it is about 66 minutes. That is, people spend 59% more time on digital media every day than watching TV. The pattern of how media is consumed has completely transformed in the past 8 years. But this change in consumption patterns is not reflected in how TV channels operate. According to Reuters Institute Digital News Report 2021, 82% of news is consumed online, including through social media. 73% of those access the news on their smartphones. The news media space is thus shrinking, and new channels compete vigorously against each other for the remaining crumbs in the overall media space by regurgitating their corrosiveness night after night. What is more, with increasing digital penetration, we are not far from the time when TV would become totally obsolete. Those who evolve would survive, and those who don't would perish in classical Darwinian fashion. The social media, ladies and gentlemen, is a different kettle of fish. The internet was the most audacious experiment in anarchy, and it has succeeded. The internet represents the largest ungoverned space on planet Earth. Never before in the history of humankind has so much power resided concurrently on so many fingertips. There is more data which is churned out every day than from the dawn of civilization to the turn of the third millennium. That is the 20th century when it ended. What we see today is a tale of two civilizations. A physical civilization, a brick and mortar civilization that evolved over millions of years, and a virtual civilization that is evolving. The future of humankind is actually going to lie at the intersection of these two civilizations. As I am out of time, I would just like to leave you with a few thoughts. One of the greatest empowering instruments that we have seen has been the rise of the social media. But that has been also one of the most corrosive instruments, because unfortunately certain elements of the social media space essentially has turned into a university of lies. There is more disinformation which is peddled out on a daily basis than can be verified. And I have always been a proponent that you cannot allow anonymity to masquerade as privacy in the virtual civilization or the internet space or the cyber civilization. I am a firm believer, and I would like to commend this as something for you to think about, that all social media accounts need to compulsorily be verified, because you cannot have a specter where people misuse anonymity to launch hate campaigns, to vilify other people, and are unfortunately able to escape the rigors of the law. I would just end by outlining a few paradoxes which characterize our media space. One is the paradox of the short fuse. While we have increased information dissemination mechanisms, our intolerance for the other person's point of view is also increasing. What we need to fix is the paradox of flawed revenue models, qua very questionable revenue generation practices. Then you have the paradox of television rating points, which make truth a casualty on a daily basis. Then you have this unfortunate specter of media trials, which impede and transgress into a fair trial which is guaranteed by the Constitution and the law. And finally, you have the non-emergence of agreed rules of engagement in the virtual civilization. To conclude, the problem why media is ruled by noise and not by the law lies in their revenue models. Till the time the media does not fix its revenue models, till the time it remains dependent upon advertisements as the sole source of their revenue, unfortunately, this corrosiveness, this WWF which passes off as primetime news at 9 o'clock at night, would only get worse, ladies and gentlemen. I once again thank the World University for inviting me to this Chhatra Sansad.